Welcome everyone to another podcast of Conversations with Anne-Marie. I am Anne-Marie, the Art of Healing. And today we're going to talk about food. This podcast was inspired by the fact that my dear friend and guest today, Brittany, hosted a cleanse, a food cleanse brought on by the medical medium. And I have this book here, Cleanse to Heal. So prompting this cleanse, I found it very interesting that all these ideas, these beliefs came up for me. So we are going to have a conversation about food, what it means, who we are surrounding food, and what it really does for us and doesn't do for us. So my guests today, I have two, are Brittany Histings, who is a beautiful channel healer in her own right. But not only that, she is a registered nurse and has a master's degree in nursing education. I hope I got that right. And so she's kind of like the medical expert on this panel. And my dear friend, Sherry Oehler, who is a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, who is now turning her focus also to food, the body, and what we truly need as Homo sapiens, and what we really don't need. So without further ado, I welcome my dear friends, Sherry and Brittany.
Hola.
Hi.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to the podcast. This is I never expected what was going to come up for me when I was called to do this cleanse. Never in a million years. So first off, I want you guys to just introduce yourselves a little bit to everybody and just kind of give us a little history of what food has meant to you in your lives. So let's start with Brittany here over next to me.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Thanks for that beautiful introduction. I feel a lot of great loving energy flowing between the three of us. So I'm very excited.
For sure.
So I'm Brittany, and food has been a huge part of my life. I grew up in a family in New Jersey. We have the best bread and bagels here in New Jersey. There's a lot of Italian influence in New Jersey. So food is an integral part of life. And growing up, we had a house at the beach, and that was like our treat for my family. We shared it with my mom's aunts and all my aunts and uncles. So my mom's one of 8, so we shared it with pretty much all of them. I mean, everyone was welcome to come there. And food was what we do there. We make big meals, we go to the beach, and we never really went on vacation. So that was really our passion. It was how we treated ourselves at the end of the day. And it was just a part of huge amounts of my culture, just both from my family as well as the local area. So food has been a huge part of my life.
Wow. And you were an ER nurse. So what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I worked in the ER for about 6 years. Now I am I'm doing a couple of things, but I have my own business where I work as an educator and a facilitator to help people understand alternative methods and alternative approaches to healing that they can use in complement to any other approaches that they are currently using.
Magnificent. Thank you. All right, Miss Sherry, how are you? You've been on my podcast before. Welcome back.
I have. Yes, thank you very much for having me back again. So as you said earlier, I am retired from the Army. I was a lieutenant colonel back in the summer of 21, and now I am a point of consciousness in this flowing universe, and I am focused only on my own journey right now, staying on my mat, as they say at hot yoga. And I'm really just healing myself in ways that I've never really dedicated myself before. But a little bit of background on me. I'm not totally brand new to the food discussion. When I was preparing to retire from the Army in 2014, I started learning different holistic healing modalities. So I'm definitely marrying Brittany in that, like, coming from a sort of like traditional community to more of a, I hate the idea of complementary, because really I feel like it's original medicine, but learning natural medicine. So I have a couple of certifications in aromatherapy that I got in 2014. And in 2015, I completed a certification through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So I have a holistic health coaching certification. And I learned past life regression hypnotherapy. So around 2015, 2016, I started realizing that there was more going on than just the body I was looking at in the mirror. But I was still at the Army, or working for the Army at the time, and very much focused on just doing that to the best of my ability, but thinking like, okay, my mind is opening up here, something's happening. And then as I was doing all those different things, I was experimenting with diets. Like I didn't stop drinking as much as I was drinking, but I added in more like fruits and vegetables. And one of the first things that I always tell people is I learned that berries are antidepressants, because I would have coffee on some mornings before going to the office, and then I would have like a berry smoothie on other mornings. And I just noticed that I had more of like an even keel in my temper, or, so I started thinking like, oh my gosh, there's really something to this natural medicine thing. But because we're so freaking programmed, it takes years for that to come into your little noodle, that like, you can use food to make you healthy. And I mean, it's just like, so
it's
yeah.
almost, we're programmed to use food to make us happy. And that's such a horrible way to look at food, because it makes you eat food for all the wrong reasons, Sherry, can you just say something about how food was in your life growing up?
Oh yeah. So I guess, similar to Brittany, when my family came together, we indulged in lots and lots of food. And that was just like part of the family. So I remember when I was a really little girl, my mother's mom, my grandma, she would make lasagna. And that was just like my affinity with her, and loving her was eating her lasagna. So yeah, and I can't think of any particular thing growing up, but it's just that the family came around the food. And because I personally have always been kind of like a sensation junkie or an adrenaline junkie, I want to be like stuffed. Like I really want to feel the food, and so I would just, because it felt so good, like you were saying, comfort. I would just eat. And then I'd be like, oh, now I need a nap. And yeah, it's like, in order to function without being an emotional person, like a normal human, you have to eat to kind of like, let's just enjoy the food rather than like really connecting or something. Like there's some obstruction there with it. So, and then I remember being a little bit of a obsessive eater. Like I was kind of restricted at home when it was just me, my dad, and my stepmom. And I can remember days that I would just like make a big thing of rice, and just, if I was like home from school or my parents weren't there, and I would just go down the basement, and it'll be like butter, salt, and pepper, and I would just eat the whole thing. Because it's like I equated it with comfort, love, and so it's all kinds of dysfunctional.
Did either of you have any, let's say, weight issues as a child?
I don't think I was ever, I was definitely like a little overweight, like probably it wasn't bad at all, but like more later high school and college,
Mhm.
especially when I was drinking a lot. I
Yeah.
was definitely, my graduation pictures, I am like full, like I look just much fuller. And I'm fortunate a lot of my weight goes to nice places before it goes, but I've always had like a little bit of a belly. We like in my family, we all have it. Even like the members of my family who have like really skinny figures, like they just have this little bump that's right below the navel. So yeah.
Yeah, I was never thin, but there was a time when I was like maybe, I don't know, I want to say like 7 or 8. No, must be a little bit over. Let's go 10, 11, where I wasn't thin, I wasn't obese, but I wasn't just like now, you know, like I'm not thin, and I'm not fat. I'm just like in the middle. But I remember the doctor saying, well, instead of having 2 hamburgers, just have 1 hamburger. And I'm like, I don't even eat 1 hamburger. So and my mom would put a girdle on me, you know, to keep my figure more slender or whatever. So, I mean, in terms of, I don't want to get too much caught up into body image, but I think it all plays into the part of ourselves that is seeking love and validation, you know, and kind of like being okay with it. The other thing I wanted to mention was we're so fortunate, right, that our relationship with food is one of abundance, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're so fortunate for that. And there's nothing more beautiful than the memory, let's say, of like Sherry's memory of eating her grandmother's lasagna. I mean, these are all beautiful, beautiful things, and we should never look back on our past with judgment and say, this was wrong, I can't believe this happened. So I really want to approach this from a moment of now and from a moment of forgiveness for the past. But it's more of being aware, of just being aware of food culture in general. I want to bring this up, Brittany, and I hope it's okay. When we first had this initial meeting, I don't know if I mentioned it in the intro, but when we started this diet, which we're in the middle of now, it's not even a diet, it's just a food cleanse. You're changing your food habits for either 3, 6, or 9 days. And it's not as daunting as some people might think. In this initial, Brittany was kind enough to meet with me one-on-one to talk about what to do, how to prepare myself to go through this food cleanse. And one of the things that came up was actually my spirit went kind of crazy. Like I was channeling throughout the whole thing. The poor girl's like, you know, what's happening? But I was getting all these messages about for her personally, for me. And one of the things that came up for her was all the lifetimes where there was absolutely no choice of what to eat, how much to eat, and how little there was. So we carry with us lifetimes of lack. And the abundance, yeah, I'm sure we've all had lifetimes of abundance, but we also carry with us lifetimes of lack. And I remember having who was I with? I was either in a part of this other channeling community where we talked about how our body's fat cells are remembering all the lifetimes of starvation. And for somebody like myself, that I had normal athletic abilities, relatively good health, but I have this kind of curvy Mediterranean figure, I guess you could call it. I was never totally thin, but I was never really obese until a few years ago when I was going through my total emotional breakdown and you know, I just blew up like crazy. But my point being, I actually wrote down a mantra to my fat cells. And I said to them, you are in this incarnation in no way going to need to retain the stores of fat that you need. You will not starve. I will not starve. I am abundant with food. You may release your fat stores. And it actually really worked. It actually helped quite a bit. So sorry for that tangent. I just went off on a side note there, but I'm sure that's going to resonate with somebody. All right. So right now, from my own perspective, my current relationship with food, I just over the past 4 years or so, went through this transformation. I was taking medicines for acid reflux. I was on hormone pills. All these things were happening, and it caused my body to swell. So I was, and plus my, forget about even eating habits, but the state of my body I felt was just so inflated. It was just not normal. I came across a supplement, a hemp oil supplement that I thought changed my digestion completely. It was marvelous. And then through my spiritual evolution, I was being given all these messages about drinking a full glass of water before you do anything in the morning when you first wake up to cleanse your body. That was huge for me. That was something that is also a part of this cleanse, drinking 16 ounces of lemon water first thing when you wake up. And then slowly, I've been nudged to get rid of the caffeine, because that is such a program and it's hard. It was hard. Okay, so I am on morning 3, I think, of no caffeine, which is pretty marvelous. And I only had like 1 day of my brain feeling like it was shrinking in my skull. So right now, can we talk about how do you guys view your relationship with food? Like, what do you think food needs to be in terms of who we are as humans, where we are in our spiritual evolution? And Brittany, can you talk a little bit about this and about the spiritual communication that food gives to us? And also tying in with this medical medium, that this is really a spiritual journey. It's not really a diet at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, medical medium has been a huge foundation for my own growth in finding my own meaning on what, food means to me. He's done a beautiful job bringing through the spirit of compassion. And one of my favorite books by him is called Life-Changing Foods. And in that book, he actually teaches you about the properties of healing of each of those plants. He talks about the emotional support and spiritual lesson. And that really hit home for me. It never had occurred. First of all, I didn't really grow up eating fruits and vegetables, fruit more than vegetables, but we ate a lot of meat, protein, always on the high protein diets. That was really trendy. I've tried those as weight loss diets and stuff and never really found much success. And basically through medical medium and through my evolving spiritual practice, I've just learned that these fruits and vegetables, they hold healing information for us. And just on a common sense level, like if there was no factories, if there was no industrial farming, what would we have to eat? And that is the plants around us. And going even further than that, I've gone to complementary physicians. I forget what his name is, but a physician who works with people who are an integrative physician with my dad when he had stage 4 cancer. And one of the first things he did was he turned his computer screen around and he said, look at these plants. He said, they're growing in your backyard and you need to incorporate them into your diet as long as you haven't been spraying with pesticides in your yard. And it's just amazing that, there's no scientific, not that there's no scientific evidence. There's not a lot of scientific evidence showing how plants can increase our health. Not a ton. There's no big industry that is funding that kind of scientific evidence-based practice. But just from a common sense level, you can look in your backyard and you are already super abundant. So without going to the store, without a dime in your pocket, you have a full medicine cabinet as well as, foods to keep you well and to really increase your spiritual vitality. Doing these cleanses, eating this way, the biggest benefit is you really create an increased connection to your guides and teachers, and you realize how numbed and blocked you are through the use of these foods, which I really feel we're addicted to. And I can speak on that firsthand. Like, I've never experienced addiction when it came to drugs or alcohol, anything like that. I've been very loose, but I notice when I don't get to have the food I want, when I'm not feeling well, when I'm not grounded, centered, connected. Like, we watched that show Dope Sick, and I was like, wow, like food, that is, I wake up and I think about, not right now I'm doing a cleanse because I'm in this great place, but I'll wake up in the morning and be like, what am I having for lunch? Because that's the first time I can have fat. That's what I've been working on. It's taken me a long time, but so yeah. So I hope that answers your question. I didn't want to.
No, it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Sherry, you've gotten really deep into what it is that we actually need to survive. Can you talk a little bit about your most recent inspiration for exploring food and what we actually need for our bodies?
Yes. So I've got the book right here so everyone can see this, The Mucusless Diet Healing System by Professor Arnold Ehret. He's a little black and white picture right here. And then the guy who edited the book is Professor Spira. I'm actually doing a coaching program with Professor Spira right now, going through this book in detail. And I would recommend that to anyone. Professor Spira has put so much work into creating this volume of videos to explain the chapters in the book, because the guy wrote it in the early 1900s, and some of the language is kind of just weird old language. But also it's good to have someone come in and edit it and update it. But so the bottom line in this book, and this is the first time I've ever thought this, but I totally believe it. It resonates so much with me. Professor Arnold Ehret says that our bodies, he calls it the new physiology, because we were taught wrong about the relationship between the heart and the lungs. In other words, your breath is our food. And so when you breathe, it moves your lungs, and then your lungs push air, and then the heart pumps. But the way we learn it, and I don't have all the real good medical words, but the way we learn it is the heart is the center of everything. But what Ehret says is, no, the lungs are everything. And then he gives the example of try and go without breathing for a couple of days, but go without eating or drinking, and you'll probably survive. Now, of course, if you're going to be fasting, you should certainly be working with a practitioner who knows what they're doing. And I'm not suggesting anybody experiment, but he literally says, we don't need food or water. We need air in our lungs and sunshine. So I haven't gotten to the point yet where I'm experimenting with fasting, but the more that I hear that, the more that I think, oh my God, I'm a Course in Miracles student, so I know that the world is a bunch of lies, and we get indoctrinated and told stuff all the time, but it's just another place where I never thought my mind would totally change. I'm embracing this idea of it's a new kind of freedom, actually, because there are some mornings where I'll have my lemon honey water in the morning, which, thank you, Brittany. The first time I did a medical medium cleanse, lemon water has become part of my life. Yeah. But I won't want anything else for a while. And instead of thinking oh, wait, my body's performance may degrade if I don't feed it and hydrate it. Now I have this other idea in my mind that I'm playing with. I'm well, I'm going to just have that lemon water, and then I'm not going to have anything for several hours. And when sensations come up that say you're hungry, you're dehydrated, you're dying, I can just sit with that and just be is it, or are there emotions? Is there a thought? Is there something else that needs to be expressed that I'm about to totally kill by eating a snack or or drinking something?
That's interesting.
So, yeah.
I've been doing this I've been eating when I'm hungry, not eating when I'm programmed to eat. Now I have someone who I'm taking care of that is, ruled by the clock, absolutely ruled by the clock. And so lunch needs to be at 12:30 and dinner is at 7. And this is how she goes. And it's ruled by the clock. My mama, we know about that. But I I've been trying not to, I don't know, I guess I'm pulled into that. And this brings up a good point for caregivers, for people who are moms, who are dads, or, you're caring for people, you're responsible for the nurturing of other people. And this is one little food thing that I've noticed myself as a mother and a nurturer, and I miss cooking. I miss cooking big family meals. I think that was one of the hardest things when I went through my divorce. There was no reason to have a meal ready. So this is an interesting thing. And my house in New York, I just bought it, this awesome new stove with a convection oven and all these burners. And I'm like, and I'm not there, and I can't cook anything on it. And I'm not even cooking anything because I'm pretty much just eating salads and I have nobody to cook for. So that's the kind of thing that is coming up for me. It's like I'm tying all this nurturing, and that's such a program in our culture, is, at least from my point of view, this concept of, providing these warm meals. And I mean, in some ways, it's a beautiful thing. It's a loving thing to do. So I guess my transformation is, how can I still have that sense of nurture, but create a meal that is not necessarily filled with fats and filled with, animal proteins, or, starches, and all this kind of things that we have found are really harmful and cause a lot of allergic reaction in the human body. From Brittany, from your understanding of the medical medium, what things that we consume kind of cause the most adverse reactions in the human body? Because I mean, you said it to me the other day, eggs and bacon for breakfast, big breakfast, waffles, pancakes, all these great things that are wonderful to eat. But then what actually happens in the human body when you consume things like that?
Yeah, so medical medium talks a lot about, he has a long list of foods that cause problems. And a lot of the times it's not just the food themselves. It's usually they've been manipulated or altered. So like a lot of the vegetables we eat have pesticides on them. A lot of like soup broths, they have, natural flavors and artificial flavors, which, you don't know what they are. That's why they're calling them natural flavors and artificial flavors. They don't want to tell you what it actually is. Eggs, he says, were and are, and if you live in a place where the eggs are the only thing that's available to you, he would tell you to eat them. He's not against animal protein, he's not against fat, but what he basically says is that pharmaceutical companies have used eggs to grow viruses, and so viruses now know to feed off of eggs. And what he says is the problem with a lot of these illnesses that have gone unsolved by Western medicine. It's a lot of these people that are suffering chronically on a medication that may be helping with their symptoms, but not totally, is that these eggs and some other foods are feeding those viruses. So I grew up on bacon, egg, and cheeses. My dad was a huge cook. He would make me one every morning. Just in that meal alone, you have the eggs, which you understand now. Bacon, again, it's a great source of fat when we're in survival, or if you have nothing else around, fine. But it's so high in fat. And what that does is it really bogs down your liver. So part of what we're doing during this cleanse is we're giving our livers a break from processing so much fat. And because everyone's on a high protein diet, you are on a high fat diet, because fat is the caloric source of protein. So it's not that you should never eat fat, and everything in moderation. You should always listen to your body and consult your healthcare practitioner. But we just need to be aware that we as Americans, especially, we're just on a really high fat diet all the time. If you eat the traditional breakfast, you have milk in your coffee, that's fat. Pretty much everything, I had butter, I had toast. I mean, toast isn't fat, but toast has a lot of gluten, and gluten has been sprayed heavily with pesticides. So whether it's gluten or whether it's the pesticides, these things are causing irritations in our bodies. And it's the cause of a lot of mystery rashes. mystery symptoms. We think we're allergic to an apple, but we're not really considering the processing that's going into so many of the products. And it's not even just the food we're eating, it's the carpets we walk on, it's the cleaning products. I mean, when I first learned about this stuff, it was a combination of medical medium and this place called Optimum Health Institute. My dad got diagnosed stage 4 cancer. We didn't have a lot of time. They gave us 6 to 18 months. We went to this place where they sort of rapidly introduce you to all these ideas, and they provide a lot of science as well. They give you mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical education on how you can go about healing yourself. And it was completely overwhelming to literally come back to New Jersey and be like, everything is toxic. And it's like, that doesn't mean you should go be scared or anything. We were in a very different crisis, dire situation. But it's just to start to become aware of what energies you're allowing into your body through that physicality, and what are you supporting through that, because it always relates back to the mental, spiritual, and emotional. But the physicality is that representation. And right now we're just living in a very toxic world. And I think the physical toxins are representative of the mental, spiritual, emotional ones through like how we're a very unloving society. So I like to make that connection as well.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it's very, very true. And we don't even think about it. One of the chapters in the book was about plastics. And yeah, it makes you question a lot. I'm like looking at my cup, it's plastic. But, again, we can't go into fear. I don't want to go into fear, but it's just awareness. And then you just make choices based on your awareness.
Yes.
Like I saw that you had this beautiful glass mason jar that was enormous and had a mug handle on it. And I'm like, oh, I want one of those because they're glass and it's clean. And, you nothing will leach into what you're drinking. Sherry, can you talk a little bit about mucus? Because mucus is a very interesting thing. Me being a singer, when I was singing a lot more and, I was in that lifestyle, they would always talk about, don't eat this before you sing, don't do that, cut the mucus in your throat, sinuses, acid reflux. This was all things that interacted with the vocal cords that would alter your sound and your ability to perform. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned about mucus and what it does to the body, and how does your body make mucus and all that?
Well, I'll try to answer some of that. I don't exactly know the how it makes it, but from what I understand, and this is all learning from Professor Arrett and the coaching program that I'm in right now with Professor Spira. But basically, mucus is it's both a defense mechanism and a reaction to toxins and poisons that we put in the body. So it sounds like when you're singing and you're using your vocal cords a lot, you want to have clarity. So you don't want to have mucus. So that you're probably told to like drink lemon and honey water and stuff to get that clear. But what I understand is mucus is all throughout the body. And I think we tend to think of it as like sinus congestion and sort of like up here. But what they say is, well, first I'll explain the detox process. So it's like ironic how you can start off on a detox and be feeling great, and then all of a sudden you get these flu-like symptoms where it's, the mucus is factored in, but you could feel fatigued and you could feel pains in your body. And it's basically like when you get out enough garbage for the body to start getting back to its like normal way of healing itself, it starts working on things that make you feel bad. And so generally people blame the diet. They quit the diet and go back to how they were eating before, which continues the numbing of, whatever chronic or acute issues are going on. So I guess like the secretion of mucus can happen. One of the pages I flagged here is a list of like pus and mucus or acid forming foods. So, I mean, I won't get into that because that's probably too much for this. But basically, like if you eat something that begins to form mucus in your body because it's one of these like not meant for human consumption foods, which is something that we commonly eat all the time. It could be meat, dairy, etc. As it's going through the digestion and elimination process, it's getting hung up along the way and creating more problems along the way. And what Eric basically says is mucus is the obstruction of life. And so is pus. I think pus is more like infected or just like, waste mucus, but like when you get mucoid plaque, when you're having like a heart attack or whatever, an aneurysm in your head, it's related to this obstructive material that is traveling throughout your body. And until you stop and you do some sort of deliberate intentional cleansing, it could clog you up in ways that appear to be what our medical system has called all these specific and different diagnoses. But from what he says, it's just one thing, and it's mucus.
Does
that help?
Brittany, can you speak to that? Can you speak to anything of that, like mucus reaction in the body?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like up to date on the latest literature in science, but I do agree with what Sherry and the doctor says about the mucus. I feel like it forms as a result of us intaking something that doesn't really serve us. And so our body creates that mucus or that congestion. I notice when I do these cleanses, the first thing that I notice is I can actually lay flat and I don't get congested. And when I'm eating all those foods, I can't lay flat. And then I notice that when I'm laying on pillows, I start to get like neck problems. And so I do really feel like the mucus, it's showing us that something isn't right. And of course, it's a natural part of our defense systems. We need it because of course we're meant to come in contact with some toxins, but I think we're just so overwhelmed with toxins at this point that's why everyone is creating so much mucus all the time. And I know that dairy is a direct, like is a pretty direct relationship between mucus forming and dairy ingestion. So
yeah, it's very true. And unfortunately, it's so good. Like I am such a butter addict. It's not even funny. I love butter. Like I love it.
Yeah.
It brings me joy. And
what do you want to do? Let's talk about it really quick because I love this. Is it the flavor or the consistency or the things that you put butter on? Like
butter, baby. I just want it. I just want butter. I love it. I love it. Don't ask. And I love a warm, toasted piece of bread with melted butter. Oh, it just makes me very, very happy. Well, let's talk a little bit about this because we don't want to go into a phase where we deny ourselves everything, right? You don't want to put yourself in that phase because I really believe that as much as it is beneficial to not do things, if there is any sort of strain attached to that, it's going to react negatively in you anyway. So it's almost like you're fighting too much, with it. So it's better to just give in to the indulgence and then deal with the consequence later. And then once you've given in, and I've noticed this with myself, if I say, let's say, I would love, I feel like, oh, I ate something really like spicy and I want to take the taste away. And I would love to have an ice cream. I noticed this the other day. I was out and there was an ice cream shop and I was like, okay, I'm going to get an ice cream. I couldn't finish it. Like the desire was there. I was eating it. I'm like, yuck. So now my craving for that is very low on the totem pole. So I think that's really important to allow your cravings to teach you. But there's always this awareness that has to come. I think the problem is that we're mostly unaware and asleep at the wheel, and we just look at food as something that we have to do. And we've taken that essential part of living and turned it into something that is based on convenience, that is based on pleasure, that is based on programming, and attributing so much to nutrition or to consumption of food, and totally blocking out the importance of the nutritional aspect involved in it, you know? Now, I consider all three of us to be kind of very aware and alert to all the trappings of the programming in our culture. Can either of you, Sherry, would you share something with us on when you got a realization of, wow, we are heavily programmed into doing things that are so bad for us? Can you think through your memory about like an aha moment you had and want to share that?
Well, I think when I was doing that, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition program, it was an online program, and I was listening to all of these, like Dr. Christiane Northrup and David Avocado Wolf. They were the ones who were like, I've been in this system for a number of years, and I'm realizing that some of the procedures and medicines are harmful. And they began to like step into this like integrative approach where they were still probably prescribing medicine or using allopathic solutions, but they were like looking to food and meditation, and like David Wolf has all these superfood recommendations and things like that. So I really started to wake up to, oh my gosh, we're being lied to back in 2014, but it didn't really land for me until several years later when I guess really like even maybe being here in New Jersey, because we're so programmed. We don't realize that the desire to eat something is more than likely connected to a past emotion or past lives, you know, and I like kind of intellectually knew it, but I didn't really land in it. Maybe until I did my first medical medium cleanse with Brittany, that I was like, okay, I'm looking at my body in a whole new way. Like, I know that I'm not my body, but this vessel deserves more love, more peace, more calm. And the things I'm doing are obviously mucking that up. So yeah.
I remember, and I'm just, because it popped in my head, and believe me, if I don't say it now, I'll forget it. Well, I remember hearing in my kind of like truth or community relationships, I heard about this PhD, actually, Dr. Robert O. Young, and he talked about the pH in foods, and he published this book called The pH Miracle. And I heard his whole testimony, how he was curing people of stage 4 cancer, and the Attorney General, the medical industry, the police, all descended on him and basically jailed him, threw him in jail, destroyed his office. And this is because he figured out something in his own, spiritual path, his own life mission brought him to this, and it totally blew my mind. So I think I started to really wake up to the pH level of the food in the body and how it really reacts, and what our body does to combat the low pH. I think it's the low pH.
I always forget.
Yeah, acidic is low.
But that was like my big aha moment. And also hearing messages about how we need sunlight. Our nourishment also comes from the sun. And if we eat things that have not seen the sun for months, for years, what are we doing? What are we putting in our body? Sun is our life. If we get so much nourishment from it, that's why we've got chemtrails blocking the sun. It's like there's it's a concerted effort.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
to damage
And
our
they're clever.
bodies.
They've been so clever.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think it's like us. I guess I'm also moving through this place of not being angry. I mean, sometimes I do get angry when I think about how
I get angry.
comprehensive and ubiquitous the
Mhm.
programming is around food.
Mhm.
But it's so comforting to have A Course in Miracles and have my beautiful friends like you, because we are all about putting more love into the world and not shaming and guilting. And
Mhm.
certainly anybody who's struggling with their diet, you know, it's like, it's okay. It's all okay. This is just a journey, all that. But like
Yeah.
to let go of the anger and the resentment to the powers that were,
Mhm.
it's a practice too.
It's a big practice. What do you want to say, Britt?
Sorry, I just like have such a couple of things I really want to say. So just as you were saying, around, not like going through that resistance of when you're like doing too much resistance, basically. One of the things I noticed, like when I was an ER nurse, I ate total crappy food. I mean, I was on my feet for 12 hours. And it took me a long time to realize it wasn't until I was a travel nurse, when I would work for 3 months and then be off for 3 months, I could see a huge difference in who I was, what I was eating. It's so true that you really have to change your mind to change your diet, because if you look at your life, you'll find that you're eating, or insert whatever your addictive thing is, caffeine, the thing that you're doing to numb yourself, you're doing that stuff because you're out of alignment. You don't love your life. And so food or caffeine or whatever, it becomes the substitute for that thing that you're missing. And once I committed to living near the beach and decided to make surfing a practice that I was going to do as my, exercise and my nature, all of those things, it became so much easier to eat this way. And just slowly over time, stuff would just fade away. Like I literally drank alcohol probably like from, not like I wasn't addicted or anything, but it was part of my social life, all throughout high school, college, years after college. And probably within like a couple of months, my entire I didn't even want to drink anymore. I had no desire. I mean, it was slowly happening over time, but I just started to find that these things, they just fell away. I didn't have to resist them. And I have also found, just looking from the higher perspective in my spiritual development, like we created this world, right? Like if you're going to come into a world that's not of God's world, like that's not complete pure love, of course, like, wouldn't it be cool to go into a world where we're being poisoned and we have to figure it out? And so I come from that perspective and I look at all these things like chemtrails and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, like this is what I came here to figure out. And sometimes you're just at that place. So like sometimes when I'm at Thanksgiving, I have turkey and gravy and stuffing and a big piece of bread with butter, because I love butter too.
Mhm.
And I feel it, but I also just enjoy it. And I trust that there is a path that we're on, and timing is really important. So it's a combination of being aware of what's happening, but also balancing out what's right in front of you, like appreciating what's right in front of you. Sometimes we have family meals and the meal isn't perfect. And sometimes I feel okay to go with it. If you're struggling with a chronic illness or a condition that's really bothering you, that might not be the route you want to take in that moment. But it also just correlates to this woman. Her name was Kelly Turner. She wrote a book called Radical Remission. She's a PhD, and she found all these people, 90 people, who had healed themselves of stage 4 cancers. They were all fit the criteria of either being 6 months away from death on hospice. They were not being treated by Western medicine anymore. And she interviewed these 90 people for her PhD and wrote a book. And she found that there was 9 general themes to what these 90 people did. And of those 9 themes, only 2 of them were physical. So that really shows that, yes, you do need to make an effort on the physical front, but it's really in the mental, spiritual, and emotional work that you'll be able to clear those traumas and clear whatever it is that's fueling the addiction, whether it's food, drugs, caffeine, whatever you have going on. Like by improving your life, you won't need those coping mechanisms anymore, and finding better coping mechanisms too. So sorry, I just really wanted to say that.
No, why did I bring you here? Because I want to hear what you have to say. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, we react, and maybe not so much for us. I think the 3 of us at least have a vibration that sustains us in a healthier place. But for the average person, I mean, you tapped into it. There's something very unloving about abusing your body, and people don't understand it. And it's such a confusing thing, abusing your body with food, especially. I believe that when you encounter a craving, an addiction of any kind, well, I think you can know the difference between a craving and an addiction. I think you crave something and then you satisfy it, but an addiction is something you can't get rid of, something that you need to do every day, something that you need to do several times a day. You know what I mean? So I believe that if people come under the awareness that if they're repeating a pattern over and over and over again, it is in their best interest to be aware and to look at themselves and say, am I really loving myself? What am I escaping from? What is this need that I have? Why is that more important than me, than my health, than love for myself? You know, this is all a spiritual war as well. You know, the energy's tied into alcohol, the energy's tied into the big fast food industry, for example. The convenience. I mean, Brittany, you said yourself, when you were a nurse and you were on your feet for 12 hours a day, you ate like garbage, because we don't even take into consideration the programming wheel that we're under, right? We need to eat something. I'm driving on the way home. I'm going to stop in fast food because I'm too busy, because it's good, because it's convenient, because it's cheap. You know, it's quite diabolical, you know, quite diabolical. Anyway, I'd like to wind this down. And any parting words you want to have surrounding this topic, anything you want to talk about for yourself, Brittany?
Well, just thank you for having me on today. Just always be really kind and forgiving with yourself on any journey. I've been on this journey for years. You have high points and low points. It kind of goes like this, but every time you come back, you're a little stronger, you're a little better, and changing your mind takes time. And to eat differently, you have to think differently, and
Right.
you're not just up against the physical, you're really up against your own mind. If you've been doing something one way for a long time, you need to give yourself a lot of time, especially the older you are, you've done it longer. So for us younger people, it can be a bit easier. Not that it's easy, because I'm telling you it's not, but it does get easier, and you do find that you have more joy, and that source of flow and energy that you typically get from food, you will find it from these other sources, and you will begin to establish a relationship with food that is of nourishment and not of comfort. But just give yourself time. We have plenty of time, and just try to have fun on your journey. So yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Sherry, anything to say?
Wow. Brittany, that was so beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would really add much onto that. I think that our relationship with ourself, is like our bigger self, is really the thing to focus on. And yes, we are in a vessel, and chances are this is the only vessel we're going to have during this lifetime. The vessel is designed to work in a very mechanical way, and we have to be honest with ourselves and be accountable to the things that we're doing to obstruct the body and prevent the body from doing what it needs to do. But I think that now that I have this spiritual practice, that I don't look at myself in this punitive way anymore. Like, oh, Sherry, no, you should have been doing this 10 years ago. And oh, if you just would have, none of that talk, like never, ever, ever. I won't talk to myself that way.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to, well, one of the protocols in this diet is doing enemas, and it's an ancillary therapy. You don't have to do them, but I've chosen to do lemon and distilled water enemas. And I literally lie down and I sing to my organs, and some crazy songs come through sometimes, but I've never had this feeling before. Like I really can have a relationship with my liver and my pancreas. And, or at least, well, I started learning that. My first medical medium cleanse go round, but it just didn't quite land. And now it's just like, oh my gosh, you know, if I speak to my animals lovingly and I speak to my plants lovingly, why don't I start speaking to my body lovingly and ask my body, what can I get rid of? Where am I screwing up? And just kind of wait for an answer. And I think that like charges up your own individual curiosity, because I wouldn't be doing any of this if I weren't curious about something. So I think I would love to encourage people to get more curious about how you're treating yourself, how you're speaking to yourself, how you're, you know, eating and drinking, and find where you can put more love and more vulnerability, and ask for more help around these places. You know, because I think you can look in the mirror and know what's up, but then it's like walking it back to, oh, I am responsible. What can I do? And how can I do it lovingly?
One of my very early spiritual teachers is a gentleman by the name of William Michael Forbes, and he's a medium and a channeler. And one of the things he's been bringing through consistently is that the body reacts to your consciousness, to your mind, that you can physically, you can make a connection with your cells, with your organs. And it comes through to me when I do healing sessions on people, and they're dealing with a very specific part of their anatomy. What comes through, the advice that comes through all the time is have a dialogue with your organ, have a conversation with your skin, have a conversation with your bones, with whatever it is that, you know, talk to it, send it love, don't deny it. And ask for communication from your body as to what you really need. And I'm all about that in my own spiritual practice, about asking my body, is this beneficial for me? And I use the pendulum to communicate that. I create a connection, and I'll say, is this in my highest and best interest? Is this in my highest and best good? Whether it be a vitamin, or whether, you know, something like that, that you kind of get overloaded with information. Yes, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that. But did you ever take a moment to ask your body, is it beneficial for me to do this? For example, there's some wonderful information about parasites in the human body, and how we have parasites, viruses, whatever it might be, that are attacking our immune system all the time, causing horrific diseases, and that we could do a cleanse, a parasitic cleanse, using different compounds, chlorine dioxide, for example, which done correctly is a miracle cure for a lot of things. And I was going to go wholeheartedly into it, but then I asked my body, is this something that would benefit me at this time? And the answer was no. So I took that into consideration, and I still question, and I asked my body, hey, is this something I should do? And I did this with this cleanse. I said, is this cleanse something that is going to be beneficial to me? And the answer was yes. So I wholeheartedly went forward and did this. So what great points to bring up. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for allowing me to also put my 2 cents into this conversation with my own experiences. Brittany, I know you have a business, right? Or you do practice kind of assisting people in this manner. How can people get in touch with you?
Thanks, Anne Marie. Yeah, my business is called Surfing Waves of Light. I offer education around medical medium protocols. I do energy relaxation sessions, and I teach surf lessons. So if you're interested in any of that, you can go to my website. It's www.surfingwavesoflight.com. And I also have a YouTube channel, Surfing Waves of Light. And yeah, and those are the 2 ways you can get a hold of me. So thanks so much.
Awesome. And Sherry?
I'm a free agent serving the creator of the universe right now, which means I'm serving myself and everyone else. But I don't have any like business established or anything. I just started doing Course in Miracles lessons on YouTube again.
Yeah.
And my YouTube channel is my name, Sherry Oehler. I think those teachings are amazing and everyone should listen. And at some point, I'm sure I'll put together a practice or something, but really right now, especially with the escalating energies of the universe and like my opportunity to live off of my pension, I'm only focusing on what comes up in the moment. And what's coming up right now is like healing my body and loving my friends and just being a part of this beautiful community. So
Marvelous.
that's me.
And that's exactly what you should be. All right, my friends, thank you so much. And for those of you out there that stayed the whole time, way to go. I really appreciate your time and attention. My name is Anne Marie Morales. I go by Anne Marie, The Art of Healing. You can find me at my website, AnneMarieTheArtOfHealing.com. And until next time, ciao.
Bye.